When I was 14 years old, I was responsible for babysitting my little cousin at his home. It was an interesting experience that I remember well. It was an ordinary night, or at least it began like one. My mom and my aunt decided to go out shopping together, excited to explore the stores and find some great deals. Meanwhile, my dad and my uncle chose to spend their time at the movies, enjoying a film and relaxing in the theater. It was a cozy afternoon, and the two of us, my cousin and I, spent time together in the living room. We were sitting on the soft couch, surrounded by the warm glow of the sunlight streaming through the window. The television was turned on, displaying a colorful cartoon he enjoyed watching, but I did not focus on it. Something felt strange and unusual. In the beginning, I found it hard to put into words what I was feeling. The house itself was quite lovely. It had a warm and inviting atmosphere that made you feel right at home. It wasn't my cousin who was causing the trouble. He was perfectly fine, sitting there and laughing at the funny show. Even so, I couldn't shake that feeling. I decided to brush it off and stood up to check the back door. I'm not sure why, but when I locked it, I felt a small sense of relief wash over me. As I strolled back through the cozy kitchen, heading towards the inviting living room, that's when I spotted him. A man stood quietly outside, observing the world around him. He was looking intently through the window, his eyes fixed on what was happening inside. He looked terrible, like he hadn't taken a shower or eaten anything in a long time, maybe even weeks. His clothes were very dirty, with lots of rips, and they hung loosely on his body. His hair looked like a wild and greasy tangle, and his eyes were locked onto my cousin. I stood still for a moment, feeling a tightness in my stomach that made me uneasy. What was he doing in this place? Why was he looking at my cousin for so long? At first, I thought it would be best to pretend that I hadn't noticed him at all. I didn't want to frighten my cousin. I stepped back into the living room, taking a deep breath to keep my voice steady and calm. "Hello," I said, trying my best to smile. "The time is passing and it's getting late. Let's go upstairs. Your mom probably wouldn't be happy if you stayed up too late." He complained a bit, insisting that he wasn't tired at all, but I managed to encourage him to get up and start moving. Once we reached upstairs, I carefully tucked him into his cozy bed, making sure he was warm and comfortable. I gently reminded him to stay there and rest well. "I will be right outside," I said reassuringly. "Please just close your eyes for a moment, all right?" He nodded his head, showing his understanding, and thankfully he didn't ask too many questions. After he got comfortable and settled in, I made my way back downstairs. My heart was beating really fast now, thumping in my chest so strongly that it seemed like it could explode at any moment. I quickly reached for the first item I saw, a meat tenderizer sitting in the kitchen. It wasn't the greatest weapon available, but it was something. I made my way back to the window, the same spot where I had first caught a glimpse of him. The man had disappeared, leaving no trace behind. His absence was noticeable, and it left a lingering sense of mystery in the air. A wave of panic surged through my body. Where was he? I hurried to the front door, my heart racing, and carefully checked each of the locks to make sure they were secure. The deadbolt was locked tightly, and the doorknob felt firm and secure in place. I hurried back to the kitchen and took another look at the back door. It was still locked tight. I didn't see him outside, but I couldn't get rid of the feeling that he was still there, quietly watching me from somewhere nearby. I walked back up the stairs and settled down right in front of my cousin's bedroom door. I held the meat tenderizer firmly in my hand, gripping it so tightly that my knuckles turned a pale shade of white. The weight of it felt both reassuring and intimidating as I prepared for what was to come. My cousin slowly lifted the edge of the blankets and looked out with curious eyes. He wanted to know what I was up to. "There's no need to worry about it," I said reassuringly. "Please just keep your voice down." He nodded his head slowly, but I could see the fear in his eyes now. I picked up my phone and dialed the number for the police. My voice trembled as I shared what was going on with them. They told me that they would send someone to help, but it would take around 30 minutes for them to arrive. After I finished my call, I picked up the phone again and dialed my dad's number. He and my uncle were enjoying a movie together and were about 45 minutes away from home. They promised they would leave immediately, but deep down, I had a feeling they wouldn't arrive in time if anything went wrong. Suddenly, I heard a sound. The sound of glass breaking echoed through the room, sharp and sudden. A sound echoed from downstairs, sending a chill through my veins and making my heart race with fear. The sound of heavy boots echoed in the quiet space, each step slow and deliberate, as if the person wearing them was taking their time to make an impression. A person was inside the house. I looked over at my cousin. "Please stay under the warm covers. Stay still and don't make any noise." His eyes were wide with surprise, but he nodded his head and followed my instructions without hesitation. The footsteps echoed softly as they traveled through the house, each step causing the old wooden floor to creak gently beneath the weight. I sat there, holding the meat tenderizer tightly in my hands. My heart was pounding so loudly that I worried it might alert anyone nearby. I could hear the man breathing now. His breaths were heavy and uneven, like a stormy wind blowing through the trees. He was looking through the rooms on the lower floor, carefully opening doors and shifting items around. Then I heard footsteps approaching. He was coming up the stairs. Every step sounded loud and booming in my ears, like a clap of thunder. I leaned my back against the door, doing my best to remain as silent as I could. The footsteps came to a halt just outside my cousin's room, creating a moment of stillness in the air. I took a deep breath and held it in, feeling the air fill my lungs as I paused. The doorknob shook and rattled, but he didn't try to open it. Instead, he kept going, checking the other rooms upstairs, the bathroom, my aunt and uncle's bedroom. Then, just as suddenly as he had appeared, I heard him quietly make his way back downstairs. I stayed completely still, holding my breath until I suddenly heard a new sound, the basement door creaking open. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. My legs started cramping from sitting in front of the door for so long, but I felt too scared to move. At last, after what seemed like an eternity, I finally heard the distant wail of sirens. The police rushed into the house, loudly giving orders as they looked through every room. A wave of relief washed over me when I heard them announce that the man was in custody. As I turned the doorknob and opened the door, I was greeted by an officer standing at the top of the stairs. He was holding the man, who looked even more disheveled, up close. His eyes were wide, scanning the room frantically. He kept mumbling words I couldn't make out. The officer later told me that the man had escaped from a mental hospital far away. He had been wandering for weeks, sneaking into houses and frightening the people inside. That night, I lay awake in bed, unable to sleep. Even after my parents and uncle returned, and even after the police had gone, I found it hard to rest. The image of that man at the window haunted me. I no longer babysit at all. Even now, I just can't. I was home alone one night back in 2009. My parents were out on their weekly date nights. One of those had one too many at dinner and passed out in the movie theater kind of dates. Anyways, I had just returned from my afternoon jog. Being a hot August day, I had worked up quite a sweat on my run, so I had decided to take a cold shower and clean up a bit. My house doesn't have air conditioning and was quite stuffed up, so I decided to open a few windows to circulate the airflow within the house. I can remember opening a window in the kitchen, 2 windows across from each other in the living room, and 1 window in the basement. I knew I was going to be spending my evening down there watching movies since it was much cooler. I had my shower, got dressed, and went downstairs to make myself some dinner. I took my dinner down to the basement and flicked on Netflix to start my binge-filled night of new shows. I do not recall falling asleep, but I must have passed out not long after eating my food and lying down. When I woke up, it was dark outside. The only light being cast into the basement was from the dimly lit TV screen. It was now freezing in the basement. I could feel a cold breeze circulating the room from having the window open for too long. I got up and walked over to the light switch that was located at the bottom of the stairs. I closed the window, then went back to turn off the TV, grab my dishes, and head upstairs. When I got upstairs, all the lights were off, indicating that my parents were still not home from their date. I cleaned the dishes, put them in the dishwasher, and closed the window above the sink. Just before I went to go up to my room for the night, I remembered that the windows in the living room were still open. I walked over to close the one window by the TV, then over to the next, which was located by the front porch. I noticed that my mom's vase with fake flowers was knocked off the table in front of the window, and the flowers were sprawled out across the floor. I didn't think much of it at the time. Maybe there was a strong breeze and the curtains had tipped it over. I closed the window and started picking up the flowers. As I was cleaning, I heard a faint squeaky sound. What I could only imagine was a door handle being twisted. I listened as hard as possible. Following the squeak of the handle was a creak in the hallway floor upstairs. A pain shot from my stomach to my chest and I froze. What seemed like an eternity of being bent over with my one hand holding the vase and the other clutching the flowers, I slowly stood up. I looked out the front window to check the driveway for my parents' car, hoping it was one of them upstairs. The driveway was empty. My heart sank. I quickly but quietly put the vase and flowers down on the table and silently began walking over to the bottom of the stairs to look up. As I got closer to the stairs, I heard two more creaks on the floor, which caused me to stop dead in my tracks. I waited, listening, nothing. I was now only a few steps from the stairs. I took those last few steps and put one hand on the railing. I peeked around the corner and only saw darkness. I didn't know what to do. Do I flick on the lights and let the potential intruder in my house know that I'm coming upstairs? Do I leave and go to a friend's house? Do I call my parents? Do I grow a pair and just go upstairs? I decided to turn my phone on silent and go to the kitchen to text my dad, making sure I was close to the back door for an easy getaway. He said, "It's an old house. It's just settling after a really hot day." I told him about the sound of the door handle twisting. He just assumed there was an open window upstairs and the wind was knocking a door against the frame. Was that it? Could it just be a window that was left open? I felt a huge chunk of my anxiety start to fade after talking with my dad, so I decided to grab a glass of water and head on up to bed. I flicked on the lights for the stairs and started making my way up, but slowly, a tiny knot in my stomach from before. I got to the top of the stairs and noticed that all the doors were wide open except for mine. My parents' room and spare bedroom were on the left, and the den in my room were on the right, with the bathroom at the end of the hallway. Though as my dad had predicted, my door was cracked just enough that a breeze could be making it hit the frame. It being as hot as it was today, it wasn't unusual for my mom to open all the doors and windows upstairs. I exhaled a sigh of relief, now fully confident that my dad was right. I turned on the lights to my room, did a quick look around, and walked over to my nightstand to put my water beside my laptop, then went off to the bathroom to get ready for bed. As I lay in bed trying to get sleepy, I was watching my favorite reruns of Seinfeld on my laptop. Then out of nowhere, I heard a sound of something slowly scraping my closet door. I quickly flicked on the light beside my bed. My closet door was cracked open ever so slightly. Questions started racing through my head. Was it open the whole time? Was it closed when I came in? I was positive that it was closed when I came in. Before I even had time to rationalize my thoughts, I heard the most disturbing, creepy, quiet, sinister laugh I've ever heard in my life. No horror movie could ever replicate the sound I just heard. As soon as I slid my laptop off my legs, the closet door burst open and someone was standing in the closet. My clothes were partially covering their body and face. I looked closer and there was the most sickly, palest, dirtiest woman I have ever seen. For the split second that I saw her in horror, the image was burned into my brain forever. She had no shoes on her disgusting, dirt-stained feet. Her skin was sickeningly white with cuts, and dried blood from her face down her arms, all the way to her legs. She was wearing what I assume used to be a white nightgown, was now a discolored mess of dirt, blood, and who knows what else. Her gray, blue-veined, sunken-in face closely resembled a decaying skeleton. The rest of her face was hidden by my clothes. She asked in a quiet, grumbling, raspy voice, "Have you seen my baby?" That was enough for me to grab my phone and run. As soon as I was halfway out my bedroom door, I heard her shriek, "Give me back my baby," and clothes hangers thrashing around behind me. I ran as fast as I could to the upstairs bathroom and locked the door. It was only a second later that I heard a huge crash against the door, along with a woman screaming in a devilish tone, demanding I return her baby to her. I called 911 and the operator assured me the police would be there as fast as they could. I jammed my feet against the door and held my back against the sink, trying my hardest to make sure the door stayed closed. The woman would not let up, though. Her shrieks turned into low, demon-like grunts, and her banging on the door turned into heavy bodily blows. With what seemed like an eternity, I heard a heavenly sound. I heard the police call out that they were entering the residence. I yelled at the top of my lungs that I was upstairs. All I could hear next was a mixed commotion of the officers yelling and the woman growling. The officers ended up pepper spraying the woman, and it took 3 of them to be able to force her to the ground. She was yelling in a possessed-like state the entire time. I did not come out of the bathroom until the cops assured me she was out of the house. The cops told me she was likely on drugs or an escaped mental patient from the next county over. I tried telling them that she sounded like she was possessed or something, but they chalked it up to the woman just needing her medication. My parents arrived home shortly